An interval is the name for the distance between two notes. Hereby it's irrelevant whether the two notes are sounding at the same time or one after the other. It also doesn't make a difference whether the interval is measured from top to bottom or from bottom to top. The interval names are really easy to learn because they're just English numbers from 1 to 13. Unison, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th. Now I'll demonstrate the basic interval names from unison to octave using the white keys on a keyboard. Imagine two players playing the same note at the same time. That's called a unison. When two letter names are spanned, it's called a second. C to D is a second. C to E is a third, because 3 letter names are involved. C, D, E. C to F is a fourth, C to G is a fifth, C to A is a sixth, C to B is a seventh. When we reach the same letter name, it's not called an eighth, but an octave. Beyond the octave, we get the so-called compound intervals, because they're made up of an octave plus something smaller. An octave plus a second is called a ninth. An octave plus a third is called a tenth or compound third. An octave plus a fourth is an 11th. An octave plus a fifth is a 12th or a compound fifth. And an octave plus a sixth is a 13. The important ones of these compound intervals are 9th, 11th and 13th. For reasons I'll later explain. To find the correct name of any interval, we have to count the positions, aka lines and spaces. So this interval spans 1, 2, 3, 4 positions. So this is a fourth. E to A is a fourth. Later on, it'll get more complicated than this, and it's very necessary to do this step first. Count the positions and give it the basic name. Because regardless of how many accidentals there are, the basic interval name stays the same. E flat A sharp may sound like a fifth, but it still has to be called a fourth of some kind, because the letter names spanned are still 4. E, F, G, A. This is a double augmented fourth, by the way, but we'll learn how to do that later. Here's a few practice examples. Pause the video and try to figure out the basic interval names. In the next video, it gets a bit more complicated because the basic interval names are not enough to precisely measure an interval. For that, we need certain adjectives that go in front of the interval name, like minor, major, diminished, augmented, or perfect. At first, we need to understand what actually makes an interval larger or smaller than another one. Let's look at some fifths and what the accidentals do. This is a perfect fifth, CG. Let's see what happens when we make it bigger. When we put a sharp symbol up there, the distance between the two notes gets larger. An additional flat sign on the C makes it again 1 semitone larger. This interval is 2 semitones larger than this one. Now let's make the perfect fifth smaller. If we put a flat symbol in front of the top note, the distance gets smaller. And a sharp symbol on the bottom note makes it again 1 semitone smaller. This is 2 semitones smaller than this interval. Unisons, fourths, fifths and octaves can be diminished, perfect or augmented. Diminished is 1 semitone smaller than perfect. Perfect is 1 semitone smaller than augmented. Perfect intervals are also so-called perfect consonances. They sound very stable and neutral. All the other intervals, seconds, thirds, sixths and sevenths, can be either diminished, minor, major or augmented. Harsh sounding intervals, like seconds, sevenths and the tritone, are considered dissonances. Whereas thirds and sixths are considered imperfect consonances. The process of naming intervals has two phases. In phase 1, we establish the interval number name by counting the positions or the letters. This is CA, C, D, E, F, G, C, D, E, F, G, A. 6 letters, so this has to be a sixth of some kind. We can write that there. Now we have to find out, is it diminished, minor, major, or augmented? I'll tell you this much. It's probably a major sixth or a minor sixth. A major sixth has 9 semitones, a minor sixth has 8 semitones. So in order to find out, you probably, as a beginner, have to count all the semitones. Or you can memorize all intervals built with 2 natural notes, aka the white keys. You can find a list of all possible intervals constructed with natural notes in the attached PDF file. CA has 9 semitones, so it's a major sixth. Here's 2 example exercises. E and G sharp. What kind of interval is that? E to G is a third, spans 3 positions or letter names. Definitely a third. Now it comes in handy to know that E, G is a minor third. It has 3 semitones. The sharp symbol makes the interval larger by 1 semitone. Minor third, EG, becomes 1 semitone larger. Minor becomes major. This is a major third. Could write a capital M something. This is a nasty example. D, D. Has to be an octave because 2 of the same note names are involved. We can look at one accidental at a time. D, D sharp. 1 semitone larger than a perfect octave. That would make it an augmented octave. Now we have an additional flat sign in front of the lower D. Again, the size increases by 1 semitone. This is a double augmented octave.